Hi, welcome to another edition of Meet the Author. Tonight we have Richard LaPorte. Hi, Richard.
Hello.
And he is the owner of Husky Trail Press. Richard, whom I know personally, publishes books in education, children, and human interest. He's a dealer for Random House and Hatchet and others. He puts on educational workshops in 48 states. That's a lot. He works with authors to publish high-quality work, and that's what we're mainly interested in because this is Meet the Author, so we want to talk to him a lot about his relationship with authors. So first of all, Richard, the name of your company is Husky Trail Press.
Yes.
Do you have any Huskies?
Actually, I have 3 of them, and I wouldn't recommend it. What I mean by that is they are independent. We daily battle to see who the real alpha dog is, and many times I lose. They're actually great dogs, but Huskies are a handful.
And why Husky Trail Press versus just Husky Press or Husky Dog Press? Is there a reason?
When we were looking up names, we wanted to have Huskies in because we liked Huskies. And we are back 15 years ago, and I think we just liked the trail. We had just come back actually from a mushing trip in Alaska where we were mushing with dogs on ourselves about 40 miles from the nearest road, Mount McKinley in the background. So I think that's where the word trail came in.
Okay. And you know what? It's sort of like a path for an author to go on to publish the trail, follow the Huskies,
Yes.
And, first time I saw a very interesting tie. Let's show the audience. What do you have there?
Well, the tie says there is no such thing as too many books. And I think that's very apropos for us today.
I think it should be the motto for every publisher.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into the publishing business. And first of all, where is your publishing house? We're in Connecticut.
Yep, it's in East Lyme, Connecticut, which is a small town on the coast.
Well, that's good. Tell us a little bit how you got into the publishing business.
Well, let's go back about 15 years ago. My sister, Pat Pavelka, was involved in education. And we decided that we had a great idea for a book. That's not it.
That's not it.
That is not the book.
No, but I mean Pat Pavelka, there she is right there.
Yes, that is Pat.
And by the way, before, I didn't want to interrupt, but look what Richard has done. I mean, I haven't seen this. This is the first time where he has a stand to hold the book on the show. I mean, that's being prepared and original and entrepreneurial, okay? But let's see the first book.
So this was the first book that we had. And we did it ourselves. We hired an illustrator. We hired an editor. And we produced this ourselves.
And what's the name of the book?
Famous Spring Birthdays.
Okay.
But we knew it was so good that we went ahead and made 2 more books before we even tried to sell them because we knew this was a good book.
Okay.
And we knew it was going to sell. So we did 3 books. One is spring, one is winter, and one is fall. So I still remember the day. We had a dining room table. We ourselves made over 200 copies of all 3 books, binding them ourselves.
So you self-published.
We self-published, yes. And this 15 years ago, self-publishing was a lot different than it is today.
Who printed it? You printed it on your...
Oh, no, probably the equivalent of Staples back then.
Okay.
And we had 200 envelopes. We had done research. We found out who the education publishers were. We put them in the envelopes. We actually have a picture with the postmaster because the pile was so high, he came to the house. We have a picture of him. And we're really excited because it was going to come in, and we sent them all out. And do you know what happened?
Didn't sell one?
Not a one.
Nada.
If we got a response.
Not even one?
Well, remember, we're sending them to publishers.
Okay.
Oh,
you weren't selling them yourself.
No.
You were going to send them to publishers.
Publishers,
okay.
correct.
Okay.
So if we got a response, it was, thank you for your request. We have no need for it at this time, which is what a lot of people run into.
Authors, you didn't have an agent?
No, there was no agent.
Okay.
No agent.
Famous
and
dilemma.
it's even harder today to get an agent than it was back then.
Uh-huh.
But the
And also, educational books for children were very popular. I mean, if anybody's going to have a book that's going to be successful, a children's how-to book is like, that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, we thought so. We thought it was going to go flying off the shelves.
Okay.
So that was our experience, that we spent all this time, this effort, this money. We sent out everything, and we got one semi-positive response. It really wasn't a positive, not that they were going to take it, but it was that you've got a lot of potential here, and this is what you need to do different.
So then what happened?
Well, after that, we all were down for quite a while. And then we took a little bit of a different path in that we actually found a traditional publisher, and we wrote 3 books to their specifications. And
Different books.
Different books, yes.
So you had to now do different books. Was it the same material or a whole different topic?
It was a whole different topic.
But you had to match to what they wanted.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. In other words, we did a book to their specifications. And they were successful.
Oh, okay.
The 3 books were successful. But when it was time to do the 4th book, we looked at it hard, we looked at the numbers, and we decided that we needed to get into the publishing business. So from the 4th book on, then we have done it ourselves.
And before that, you were not a publisher. You just said, I have to get into the business.
Correct.
To be in a partnership with your sister? Who
Yes.
was a
My sister,
educator.
Pat, she was an educator, and I was in business. And we came
she
together
was-
and...
I'm sure, that's a dream come true for an educator who wants to get their ideas, because this is a similar path to myself. You want to get your ideas out there, and you're looking for ways to get it out, and now you have a brother who's going to be a publisher who can help you get your ideas out there. That's amazing,
Well, you'll have to ask her how good it is to work with her brother. Actually, we do work very well because she
But you have
concentrates on the
success.
writing end,
Yep.
and I concentrate on the
There
business
you
end.
go, match made in heaven. So let's see some of the books that you put out with your sister, first of all.
Okay, we've got a sampling here. This was one of the first books. This is about squiggles. If you're in the education field, you will find that teachers always have the problem of students coming up to them and saying, I don't have anything to do now. I'm done with my assignment. What is the next thing I should do? So Pat wrote this book, and what it is writing prompts. It's called Squiggles, and you can do a whole bunch of writing, whether it be history or poetry. And it's used from pre-K, and we have some middle school students using it.
There are some of the stuff on the inside.
And that's a squiggle.
That's a squiggle.
Don't want to go through the whole concept of it, but what it does is it gives students a prompt that they can write a story, that they can do an illustration with. And that is for teachers and administrators. And we're looking to do a book for parents on that,
And I
too.
can attest to some students, they don't like to write. I mean, I teach handwriting, which handwriting improvement, and I've come across that where they just don't even want to begin to write. And I think that's a fantastic concept to get them to put pencil to paper with starting off with a squiggle.
And a compliment to what you are saying is that is an image that they can write with. But then they also can say, okay, well, I can draw something, but now I need writing. This book here is about writing prompts. It says, for instance, it gives here a whole bunch of different, this is the how, a whole bunch of different thoughts on what students can write about. How would you explain? How would you prove? How would the story be told different if? How do you feel?
And what's the name of this again?
This is question prompts.
Question prompts, taking comprehension to a higher level. Okay?
That's been
another
a nice
that
book
you
for
wrote.
us.
Good.
And again, this is education, so we have another education book here. It's called Guided Reading Management. If you're in education, guided reading is a concept where you take students and you put them in small groups into the classroom. And the result can sometimes be a little bit chaotic. So this is a book on how to manage your classroom when you have different groups going on.
So, was this also from your sister?
Yes, this book here, Whole Group, is another education book. I had this one here for a little different reason. We haven't got to editing yet, but let me bring up while I have this
Go
book
ahead.
here, is we have all of our books edited, sometimes many different edits, which we will discuss briefly coming up. But this book was completely edited. It was 100% done. And what we do with this book, as we do with all our books, we then take it to another reader who has never read it, who's in the business of education and editing. And this here is all of the suggestions they made. Now, of course, we did not take all these suggestions and put them in the book, but a lot of good points were brought up. We did revise some things, and there's no such thing as not being able to edit the book. You have to be really tough on yourself. You have to be able to be opened to let other people look at your book, critique your book. And this is just an example of it.
So you had succeeded with your sister now to publish. How many books did you publish with your sister altogether so far?
I believe she's on her 15th.
On her 15th book.
Yes.
And she does these tours around the country, and you bring other books that you market or distribute through Random House and others, where she refers to these books, and you have them there also. So you have this publishing business.
Yes, because
So-
what happens is on her in her education seminars, it's not just her books that she refers to. She refers to any good education book, and that way we have them available
and
at
you're
these seminars.
able to have it available. So from there you got on. How did it go? Proceed from there. That you started saying, well, let me take on other authors.
It happened by chance that somebody knew that we were a publisher, and I got a call one day and said, would you consider looking at my book? And that's really how it started. And the first one worked pretty well, and then next thing I knew, there were other authors and other potential authors.
How many books do you have from other authors right now? I actually saw your website. It's beautiful. And you yourself also gave a demonstration once about how to have a website for authors. So the publishing business is very detailed. So how many other authors do you have right now?
Well,
About
I have about 8 or 10
Published,
authors, but I also consult with others.
Okay.
And sometimes they do the books themselves for a variety of reasons, but I help them take a concept that they have, form it so that it's the best product that we can get out there.
So the one thing led to another, from going to help your sister produce her work to being a publishing house, from that to self-publishing to becoming a publishing house, and now to have a consultation business.
Exactly.
And then
yes.
the next step was you yourself are going to be an author, right?
Well,
that's the very next step.
I encourage people to write, whether you're an author or I think everybody has a story.
There's not enough books. We have more.
Correct.
So you read your own tie. You wanted to
And
add.
so I felt that if I promote people writing books, that I should do it myself. You know Peggy Gaffney.
Yes.
She
was a guest on the show.
She's very good. She has written quite a few books. She has a really niche market. She has done very well. And she and I are going to co-author a book on do-it-yourself publishing, where we are going to give the steps that you should follow to produce a good book. And whether you do it all yourself or whether you do parts yourself and so-called farm out other parts, whether it's the editing, the illustrations, the putting it together, the design, etc. You are the manager, and this book will help you to follow the steps.
Well, if I can ask an unfair question, I know that you and Peggy have a tremendous amount of experience, you know, and you can also mention that you're associated with the New England Independent Publishers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that's part of your experience.
Independent Publishers of New England, it's an organization similar to CAPA. We are both
Connecticut
members of
Authors and
CAPA.
Publishers Association.
The one in New England focuses more on the publishing end. We have a lot of independent publishers such as myself, but there are a lot of authors that self-publish books, and there's a lot of authors that want to be involved in the actual publishing end. So where CAPA has more of an emphasis on the authors, the IPNE, is the acronym for it, we this organization concentrates more on the publishing end of it.
And are
What do
you
you
on
do?
the board of that?
Yes, I'm a
or-
board member.
Okay, so you're a board member of IPNY.
Correct.
So I know that you and Peggy's a board member of Kappa. So between the both of you, you really know the publishing, authoring, self-publishing business. But what is your, this is the unfair part, but maybe it's fair. How's your, I mean, I know there are other people who put books out like that. How is your book? Is your book going to be any different? Or if yes, in what respect?
We feel it's going to be different. Peggy, about 5 years ago, wrote a self-publishing book, and I don't have it with me, but it was very good, and I actually referred to it. So we're going to take that, and we're going to go to the next level. If you look at a lot of these books, what they are saying is you have to spend a lot of money to do this, or you have to spend a lot of money to do that. One of the things our books is going to give options. Okay, if you're very economical, these are the things that you can do. If you have a modest budget, these are the things you can do. And if you have a larger budget, these are the things you can do. So it's going to be a pretty good size overview and give somebody options on where to go and what steps to take to put out a book in a very confusing market.
And I know Peggy's very good at that because I know she actually brought her own books to printers in many respects, and so she knows very well how much it costs to print a book. Not everybody knows that.
And we also are going to do a breakdown. In other words, if you have a traditional publisher and you sell 500 books, how much money would you get from a traditional publisher? Then if you did it yourself, how much money would you have to pay up front, and how much income would you get at 500 books? So we're going to do a breakdown of different costs, and sometimes the
That'll be in
results
the
are
book.
surprising.
Very nice.
And that'll be out this fall.
Now, as part of it, you said you're also consulting authors, and this show is Meet the Author. What are some of the problems or questions that authors come to you with that you consult on them on?
Well, oftentimes an author has an idea, but they're not in the publishing field. It could be that they've written a book or two and it hasn't done much, or that there's their first time, and the whole business is confusing. How do you get a good book? How do you write a good book? And then after you write a good book, what is the procedure to get it published? Do you do it self? Do you go after agents? And if you do it yourself, who do you use? Because the self-publishing, there's so many different ways, and some are good to do and some are bad to do. And self-publishing also has a bad rep now. The reason being is
It's always had a bad rep. I thought it got better, though.
Well,
You say
actually,
now, it's getting worse?
it's getting worse. Maybe 10 years ago or so, it was almost prestigious to be a self-publisher because that meant you went through the effort and time to do it. But now, to be a self-publisher, if you have a document, all you do is convert it to a PDF and upload it. So it has not gone through a rigorous review that any book should go through.
I'm happy you mentioned that because initially, because I also self-published initially, and people made a distinction when they were putting down self-publishing. Well, there was a distinction between vanity press, where you just, like you said, you weren't really prepared and someone just printed it for you and you call yourself a publisher, to someone who went through the process of editing and they still published. So, yeah. Tell us about your other books. Sorry about that.
Okay. These are two other books that I have done, and these are not education books, although they can be. These I would classify under human interest. For instance, The Slave Catcher's Woman, this was just released. It's about slavery pre-Civil War, and it's based on a historical fiction, but it brings, to me, it brings the whole era to life. I was actually felt that I was part of it, and I think that's part of the for me, the compelling part of this story. It's also a mystery, and it's a thriller, and there's a lot of action, but at the same time, it tells you what it was like to live at those times. This is done by Jim Littlefield. This book here is John Frank, along with his wife, Nancy Rupert. John went through cancer. What happened is they met late in life. They got married, and they were very excited about what was going to happen. And within a year of being married, he ended up with cancer. and he survived a year or two. And this is his story, and it is sad, but at the same time, it's encouraging. It tells about how he battled it. He's got quite a sense of humor. He did a rap song about cancer, and this is how he and how his wife got through it. So those are two human interest stories that I have.
And before we finish the show, getting back to the authors, and you showed two books that you published for authors. What can an author do to make a good author-publisher relationship? I think that's a very important question. And a lot of authors have that problem. They don't understand the publisher and the agent process, and they get very ticked off. I've seen that.
True, because it can be complicated. But here I've got some quick points that if you follow these points, it's going to make it much easier for you to deal with, whether it's an agent, a publisher, or anybody in the business. It could even be a design team that you have. First, when you submit a complete manuscript. For instance, if you are going to have editing ahead of time, get all the editing done. If you are going to I think I know what your question is. Your question is, aren't you supposed to submit things before the final edit? And the answer is yes. If you are going to do a query to either an agent or a traditional publisher, you can take a unedited chapter and send it, because what they're looking for, and also myself, when I get a manuscript to look at, I want to see I don't need to see the edited.
But the more you're prepared, see, this all boils down to the Boy Scouts. Be prepared. The more you're prepared, the better.
Correct.
Okay?
But if you come to an agreement with an author, with a publisher, submit the final manuscript. Don't submit a chapter at a time. Don't submit a manuscript and then a week later call and say, oh, I need to make these changes and this changes. Submit the complete manuscript.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is more where the publishing house approached the author to write a book about their life or their story, a biography, and they're going to pay them to do this so they can do chapter and submit it. But here they're approaching the publisher, so it's a little bit different concept.
Well, the publishing houses, if someone is fortunate enough to get a program with them, they want the complete manuscript.
Correct.
They don't want chapter by
that's
chapter.
That's different than if the publisher went and sought out the author. It's a different story.
Publishers always want the whole manuscript. They don't. There's unless it's an unusual circumstances. For instance, if there's a campaign coming up, an election, and they need something fast, they may take parts. But the general rule of thumb is they want the complete manuscript. Also, an author should have a good idea of what the time schedule is that the publisher is on as well as the author is on. For instance, if the publisher is going to let them know different milestones. For instance, when the first review is going to be, and often reviews, called passes in the industry, there's usually 4 to 6 passes that go through. When is the cover design going to be done? And then, most important, is when is the book going to be released? And it's good that the author understands what these deadlines are.
That's very, very important, because from my understanding, if an author has a material that is very time sensitive and the publisher is going to take a very long time to put it out, so that's an instance where a self-publishing this time sensitive material might make sense and be justified. And
there's a lot of reasons that self-publishing can be justified, and that's one of them.
That's one of them.
Yes.
So they should know how long this whole
process is.
But on the other hand, their ability to distribute it won't be as good as a publishing house.
Well, that's it. That one of the biggest advantage of a traditional publisher is that they have distribution. And they're usually, unless you're that 1% of 1%, unless your name is Patterson or Palin or Clinton, you're probably not going to get a budget, a marketing budget, which means that you're going to have to go out and develop your own clientele. Now, what they again provide is a distribution, the fact that your book will be available at literally any bookstore, any retail outlet in the country, that it will be part of their program, will be part of their a distribution package. However, the actual selling is up to the author.
So, Richard, we're going to end our show now. Any last comments you'd like to make about your process or the author's process or any of the books that you put out?
Well, for authors, let me hit on two key things. Number one, make it the best book that you can do. I or anybody in the industry can often, actually we can do it almost any time, walk into a store or take a look at a book and know immediately how much time and effort was put into the whole outlook of the book, the cover, the design, the writing. And it doesn't take long for somebody to realize what the quality of that book is. So, number one, I'm going to say put out the best book that you can do. And I'm going to skip now over the actual production phase and go to what I consider the hardest part for most authors, and that is after their book has been written and after their book is out, you have to go out and you have to sell. You have to be out there. You have to do programs. If you're online, you have to have an online presence. You have to do demonstrations. You have to be able to have a 5-minute segment of your book, and you have to be able to do an hour segment of your book.
You have to come on shows like Meet the Author.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Well, our tradition is you sign over a book or two to the show. You're welcome to sign one over. I wanted to mention about, you said you saw the book and you know right away. A corollary for me would be, I can tell, I put on a movie and I want to know if I want to see that movie or not. I can actually tell in the first couple frames of the movie if this is going to be a good movie or not by the quality of that movie. And so I really hear what you're saying about that.
Absolutely, and it's very important. And if you look at traditional books from traditional publishers, they're not bad. They may not be great books, but they're not bad. And part of the reason is they go through a process, a very, very rigid process. I wanted to mention...
And that first line is important. I mean, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I mean, who can forget these first lines, right? Get that first line out there.
These are our two latest projects. This is a book for teachers. We're really excited about it. These here has gone through about 10 different editing processes that has taken 6 months to develop. Mm-hmm. This one
is called Reading Standards for Literature by Patricia Pavelka.
And that is for grade K. This is for grade 1. It's a series of 12 books that will be coming out over the course of 2 years. But if you look at these books carefully, you can see that one is K, one is 1. There is a continuity with design.
So one last quick question. Where can they get where can they find your materials that you're publishing?
Please visit huskytrailpress.com if you have any interest in any of these books. But if you're an author or thinking about being an author and you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you.
So that's
www.huskytrailpress.com. huskytrailpress.com.
Thank you, Richard.
So these are two children's books. These are from Pat Pavelka. She has also signed these over to you, and I have signed them as the publisher. And in the fall, I'll be able to sign one as the author.
All right. We'll have you on again, okay? We'll talk about your maybe we'll have you together with Peggy.
That would be excellent. We'd enjoy that.
Repeat guests. That would be great. Okay.
Thank you.